Okay, MOvember 2019, day 7. I'm going to shave this thing in tomorrow. So I'll make a decision on what sort of mow I'm going to grow tomorrow morning. Monday and Thursday I run a group based on the helping people work through the symptoms of complex stress, and the early parts of the groups are sort of upskilling and learning and educating about the symptoms. And so one of the tools that I read already is the 14 sort of perfectionism and endangerment, sort of inner critic, outer critic attacks that we can have, and the affirmations that we can use to sort of start some reformatting, reprogramming around that. So I just wanted to sort of build on that. So this video will be just called, embracing the inner critic and using thought substitution and thought blocking to just not let it sort of take hold. So Pete Walker, a little toolbox to at the back end of this that pulls together gratitudes about self and others, and a very popular tool in 12-step recovery, and for people that are working through the developmental trauma that we build on the work of Louise Hay and all those folks in the 80s that really brought affirmations back into vogue, and now very popular in 12-step groups, people sending their gratitude lists out. For Christian people, it would be not just being thankful for the gift, but thanking the giver. So I will get into it. This is the back end of the inner critic work, and it's called Embracing the Critic. In my experience, until the fight response is substantially restored in complex post-traumatic stress clients, they benefit little from CBT, psychodynamic or mindfulness techniques that encourage us to accept the critic. In later recovery, when the survivor has removed the venomous stinger from the critic, these techniques can be quite valuable. Then, and only then, are we able to reconnect with the helpful side of the healthy self-criticism. A typical indication that the critic has mellowed into being functional is that it speaks to us in a kind and helpful voice. It reminds us dispassionately to adjust our behavior when we can and ought to be doing something better. If, however, it blasts us for imperfection, it is giving itself away as the toxic critic that was installed by our parents. A left-brain objective approach to embracing the critic is rarely helpful unless it is balanced by a subjective right-brain capacity for assertive self-protection. Perhaps this is because the inner critic appears to operate simultaneously with hyper-emotional right-brain flashback dynamics. Perhaps toxic inner critic processes are so emotionally overwhelming that efforts to resist them rationally and dispassionately are too weak to be effective. So Pete goes on to talk about thought substitution and thought correction. Thought substitution, especially in the form of a thought correction, is another essential tool for empowering the work of thought stopping the critic. Many years ago, I sensed that my inner critic became as tough as a bodybuilder's bicep through the myriad of repetitions. I guessed that similarly exercising self-protective responses to the critic would build my thought correction muscles. It did, in fact, and my instinct to protect myself almost always arises automatically now when I am triggered into a flashback. I believe I am not exaggerating when I say that tens of thousands of positive thought substitutions have rewarded me with a psyche that is fairly consistently user-friendly. Accordingly, I encourage you to immediately confront the critic's negative messages with positive ones like those in the list at the beginning of the chapter. And that was the affirmations for the inner critic, perfectionism and endangerment attacks that I've done in another video. Moving quickly to thought stopping and thought correction often obviates a headlong tumble into the downward spiral of a flashback. This is essential in critic work, as the critic typically attacks us more viciously once it has gotten up ahead of steam. At such times, the critic can hypocritically scorn us for falling back into self-criticism when we should know better. This is the time, then, more than ever, to thought correct and not self-berate, as my last intern liked to say to her clients. Additionally, I encourage you to write out a list of your positive qualities and accomplishments to read it to yourself if you get lost in self-hate, which is toolbox number 5 at the back of this book. Toolbox 5 in chapter 16 is a practical exercise to help you elaborate this list in a multi-dimensional way. Making a written record of your positive attributes is especially helpful, as flashbacks often create a temporary amnesia about essential worthiness and goodness. Flashbacks seem to involve a temporary loss of access to more current left brain learning. MRIs show greatly reduced left brain activity in hyper-aroused complex post-traumatic stress survivors. In my experience, memorizing a list enhances your capacity to dissolve the amnesia. Reciting part or all of your list over and over like a mantra can also help you during the times when the critic is particularly severe and relentless. If you have trouble making the list or filling out Toolbox 5, ask a friend or a therapist for their input. Additionally, please let me remind you that qualities do not have to be perfect or ever present to qualify as qualities. If it is true of you most of the time, then it's a quality. Finally, positive visualization can be a powerful adjunct to thought substitution. Some survivors gradually learn to short-circuit the fear-mongering processes in the critic by evoking images of past successes and accomplishments, as well as picturing safe places, loving friends, and comforting memories. There are also a variety of CDs available in places like Amazon.com that contain guided meditations that use positive language and imagery in the way that enhances deactivation and relaxation. And I would say these days, this day and age, with the Calm app or with YouTube videos, you can access that material as well. And it reminds me too, when I read this, of just how important tools like brain spotting, finding resource points, and learning how to really serve that sort of sympathetic nervous system. So perspective substitution and correction, the most important thought correction of all, is a switch in the perspective of our thinking. Perspective substitution is a broadening of our overall perspective. It moves our viewpoint from the critic's narrow negative focus to the more balanced and accurate focus on observing the ego, the mindful self. Perspective substitution helps us to dethrone the critic from its life-negating point of view. This resembles the firing of a bad manager or inept coach, one with a distorted view who dwells so much on what is wrong that he cannot see what is right. As stated in Chapter 1, perspective substitution can be enhanced with the spiritual practice of gratitude. In this vein, gratitude is a type of mindfulness that looks for empirical proof that life is essentially good, though it is quite difficult at times. Perspective substitution and gratitude. Gratitude is a delicate subject to write about because many survivors have been abused by shaming advice to just be grateful for what you have. Consequently, many survivors totally reject the concept of gratitude and throw the baby out with the bathwater the baby out with the scorn-sodden bathwater. Once again, this is quite understandable when you legitimately had little to be grateful for in your childhood. Moreover, the concept of gratitude is damagingly used by some psychologists to support the psychological defense of denial. They tout gratitude as a fast track that can bypass traumatic pain. This is worse than absurd when applied to complex post-traumatic stress survivors. It is, in fact, shamefully abusive to survivors because profound, extended trauma cannot be resolved until it is fully understood and worked through. Gratitude is nevertheless a wonderful natural experience that can recurrently enhance the quality of your life. You can cultivate a perspective that is open to noticing what there is to be grateful about, as long as you do not do it with the intention of creating a permanent feeling of gratitude. It will pass. Over time, the attitude of gratitude can gradually increase authentic gratefulness. This can best be illustrated with the example of love. While it is, of course, healthy to adopt a cognitive attitude of love towards our friends and chosen family, it is impossible to feel loving all the time. If I expect that of myself, I give my inner critic endless fodder to attack me for not feeling loving enough. Similarly, if I expect myself to feel grateful all the time, I keep the critic's prestigious program of self-disappointment hale and healthy. Or hale and hearty. Sorry, Pete. Nonetheless, aligning with attitudes like love and gratitude is generally therapeutic. When I am temporarily stuck in a flashback, feeling alienated from life, remembering what I am usually grateful for in life can sometimes pull me out of the polarized negative thinking that helps me keep the flashback alive. Invoking gratitude is particularly difficult and often impossible at first, because flashbacks typically strand us in an emotional overwhelm that cancels out our ability to feel anything good about life. Reminding ourselves of what is worthwhile in our lives does not seem to help much in the early phases of using this tool. However, with enough practice of positive noticing, we can sometimes relax out of a flashback by invoking our memories of gratitude. When I experienced this at the end of an especially long flashback, positive noticing sometimes arises spontaneously and brings with it sweet tears of gratitude. These are also typically tears of relief and tears of an achieved sense of belonging. These tears typically arise unbiddened, seemingly out of the blue. Typically, they are positively triggered by experiences of beauty or connection, such as when flowers authentically strike me as beautiful once again, or when my appreciation of music returns and deeply moves my soul, or when I suddenly fully feel how much I love my wife, my son, my friend, or my client. After a painful lapse in being able to emotionally enjoy these experiences, this return brings gratitude-laden tears, which on really momentous occasions can vacillate between crying and laughing as I resurface into authentically being grateful to be alive. So once again, my experience is that the more I practice thought substitution on focusing on what I'm grateful for, the sooner genuine gratitude returns to me on the occasions that I lose touch with it. A powerful way to practice perspective correction is as follows. After you go to bed at night, list the 10 positive happenings of the day. More often than not, these will not be peak experiences, but rather basic and simple pleasures and appreciations. They may be as simple as a catchy tune, an engaging colour, a sweet scent, an enjoyable food, a serving of the day, a new flower in the local garden, a satisfying TV show, a neighbour's hello, a feeling of fitness climbing the stairs, soothing words from a favourite author, or a pleasant encounter with a pet. Decades of this practice has helped me immeasurably to upgrade the sour perspective I inherited from my parents. Alignment with this function of the healthy, observing ego provides us with more balanced and accurate perception of life and other people. The neuroplasticity of the brain. I am repeatedly heartened to read the accumulating evidence from neuroscience research that proves that neuroplasticity of the brain, that neuroplasticity means that the brain can grow and change throughout our life. Old self-destructive neural pathways can be diminished and new healthier ones can replace them. A General Theory of Love by Thomas Lewis inspiringly explicates this fact. This fact helps me to remember that the critic can indeed literally be shrunk via long-term, frequent and dedicated use of thought stopping, thought substitution and thought correction practices. As recovery progresses, you notice the critic soon before it attacks becomes multidimensional. This then allows you to take a more immediate self-protective action. Moreover, complex post-traumatic stress flashbacks can be utilized as evidence of, and in later stages of recovery, proof of your childhood traumatization. Flashbacks point irrefutably to the fact that your parents' abandonment forced you to habituate to hypervigilance and negative noticing. So I hope that's useful. Now, the little tool that the back Pete talks about it's a little gratitude box, and it talks about writing about our accomplishments, traits, good deeds, peak experiences, life enjoyments, intentions, good habits, jobs. It's just getting you to write these things down, get conscious, because we lose track of these. And the other things there are subjects studied, obstacles overcome, grace received, nurturing memories. It also then asks you to do that about others, friends, inspiring people, inspiring authors, school friends. And to just top off this, circle of friends, childhood friends, teachers, strangers, kindness to strangers, pets and animals, work friends, groups, past and present, nurturing memories. So I hope tonight, as you look at that tool, if you really struggle with, less than nurturing, a less than nurturing childhood that's left you with an inner critic or an outer critic, and these flashbacks that Pete's talking about, there's certainly plenty of great tools. It just always reminds me now the different therapies that really work with the body and the mid part of the brain, and brain spotting and somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy and EMDR and tapping, and all those things are fantastic and essential. I think people have to be doing those, and I'm glad I've learnt those skills, with at least some of those skills. But I must say I still see the benefit in this material and people using real practical steps to change the tapes. And I'm convinced of that by sitting again this morning with 7 people that have been torn apart by childhood, really disappointed and hurt by adult life experiences, and that need to adjust this thinking, and just how overwhelming it is and how deep and entrenched those old patterns are. So please, I'm a big fan of Pete Walker. This book is a fantastic book. You can get it in all formats. Audio, I've been listening to this again as I'm running these groups, Kindle and in hard copy. There's other resources there on Pete's website at pete_walker.com. This is MOvember. I will shave a mustache in tomorrow. This will be the end of my 7-day growth. Please donate to my page. Look on the YouTube, follow the links there for other things. And as they say on YouTube channels, press that little button so you can get any, when a new video comes out. And subscribe if you like this. And please pass this on to anyone that's in recovery or would benefit from the material that gets delivered through these little videos from MOvember. So be gentle with your heart. Travel well in recovery, and I'll talk to you soon.